Over the years, we've seen many wrestlers undergo exponential surges in popularity, only to disappear from the ring entirely due to controversies that portrayed them in a whole new light. So in today's video, let's take a look at 10 wrestlers we'll never see again in WWE or AEW. And be sure to subscribe with notifications turned on and drop a like on this video to help give it a kick into the YouTube algorithm. Anyone who's been watching wrestling over the last couple of decades will no doubt be familiar with Brock Lesnar. After all, he dominated pretty much every aspect of the industry during the 2000s and 2010s. That said, for as much as an aura he carries with him every time he returns to the squared circle, it looks like his days as an in-ring performer might be over after a sex trafficking lawsuit was filed by Janelle Grant against Vince McMahon in January 2024. The lawsuit alleges that McMahon offered the opportunity to have sexual relations with Grant as part of contract negotiations in the summer of 2022, whilst claiming McMahon shared explicit photos and videos of her to an unnamed wrestler who requested it. Whilst the wrestler is unnamed, it states that this individual is a former UFC heavyweight champion who re-signed with WWE in August 2021 before returning at SummerSlam 2021. WWE sources would confirm to the Wall Street Journal that the person in question is believed to be Brock Lesnar if it wasn't already obvious. It's clear that WWE are keen to distance themselves from any individual mentioned in the lawsuit, and we've since seen Brock Lesnar's Royal Rumble 2024 return be scrapped, with any creative plans for him going forward being cancelled. Not only this, but the Beast Incarnate has also been removed from the intro at the start of WWE shows, with his involvement in the WWE 2K24 video game being reduced from one of the cover stars to somebody unplayable outside of the Road to WrestleMania game mode. When AEW first formed in 2019, it seemed like a no-brainer that Marty Scurll would become All Elite. After all, he was a bona fide member of the Elite alongside Day One AEW originals such as Kenny Omega, Cody Rhodes, and the Young Bucks. However, in a shocking turn of events, Scurll would choose to sign with Ring of Honor instead, swayed by the offer to become the company's head booker. 6 months later, it would all come crashing down for the villain when his nickname took on a whole new meaning. June 2020 would see the speaking out movement pick up steam and reveal a whole host of abusive behaviour going on behind the scenes in the industry, primarily in the UK scene. One of the people caught up in this would be Scurll himself, as he was outed as allegedly grooming a drunken 16-year-old girl into having relations with him. The Marty Scurll debate continues on to this day, with some feeling that he should receive a pass due to the girl in question being above the age of consent in the UK, whilst others argue that she was still under the influence, rendering that consent as invalid. Not only that, but Scurll is said to have been in a position of power over the female, as he was one of the people that was training her. Despite Marty's real-life best friends still holding positions of power in All Elite Wrestling, Tony Khan hasn't made a second offer to this day due to the public relations nightmare that would ensue, despite remaining close to the Elite away from the ring. And given the mess Endeavor have found themselves in since buying WWE in 2023, it's obvious they too simply won't want to take the PR risk. Another once popular indie performer who, given his relationship with the Elite, at one point looked to be a shoo-in for AEW, that being Joey Ryan. Ryan made a name for himself with his porn star-inspired Lothario character, but whilst it was easy to laugh at these things like his superhumanly strong penis at the time, such aspects of his creepy gimmick have since taken on a far darker connotation in the light of the numerous sexual assault allegations levied against him. It was during the speaking out movement that at least 17 women would accuse Ryan of sexual assault and harassment, and whilst he would initially try to defend himself by filing several defamation lawsuits against the women in question, his decision to do so only made the whole situation look much worse for the Los Angeles native. Even all these years later, Ryan finds himself blackballed from the industry, with his attempts to return all being squashed before they could begin. Hell, he's even struggled to hold down a job in the years that followed. In 2022, footage surfaced online posted by an eagle-eyed fan who spotted Ryan, real name Joseph Meehan, working the rides at Disneyland, California. Following concerns that an alleged sexual predator was working around children, they made sure Disney were aware of this, and that ultimately led to Ryan being fired from his position. So given he can't even hold down a 9-to-5 without pressure being placed against his employer, don't expect to see him showing up in AEW or WWE anytime soon. There was once a time that it felt like Velveteen Dream was poised to be the next big breakout star of WWE. After all, his Prince-inspired character was a huge hit with fans down in NXT, and with him apparently having the backing of Triple H himself, the sky appeared to be the limit. He had it all: the look, the charisma, the in-ring ability, and more importantly, he had the intangible it factor. But all that would change when screenshots of him allegedly grooming minors via text messages were leaked online. Even then though, this wasn't enough to get Velveteen Dream released from WWE, as Triple H seemingly decided at the time that any problems he posed were outweighed by his potential as a superstar, with an internal investigation apparently finding no wrongdoing. That said, eventually he would be cut from his contract when the hashtag Fire Velveteen Dream movement became too big to ignore. It should be said that Dream has denied the allegations made against him and recently sat down with Chris Van Vliet to break it all down bit by bit. However, questions do still remain unanswered, such as why did he open the interview by claiming the conversations with minors were faked, before later going on to describe his relationship with the individuals in question, where he admitted to have taken on a mentorship role in their lives. Jimmy Havoc was once considered a great success story of the UK wrestling scene, a long-time independent performer who regularly put his body on the line for fans in brutal matches, finally getting his due by being signed to a contract with a major North American promotion, namely AEW. But any dreams Havoc had of rising up the AEW rankings and maybe one day challenging for the world title were cut short when, during the height of the speaking out movement, he was hit with accusations of domestic abuse. And whilst in many cases of speaking out, there remains some sense of innocence until proven guilty. In this case, we know that Havoc did what he was accused of, as he would later admit to it. And since that point, the Dartford native hasn't been seen in a wrestling ring since, whether that be his choice or the choice of promoters. Since his fall from grace, Havoc has been spotted working as a delivery driver in his hometown and has even performed gigs as a stand-up comedian, though it's clear that his days in the squared circle are over, and at the very least he remains untouchable to the major promotions. We should be talking about Tessa Blanchard as being one of the most important and game-changing female wrestlers in history, someone who can stand up alongside the likes of Mildred Burke, Chyna, and Manami Toyota. After all, the daughter of Tully Blanchard did what no one else had ever done before her when in 2019 she won a major men's world title whilst working for Impact Wrestling. But while that weekend should have been the highlight of her career thus far, it ended up being a low point instead, as it was then that multiple accusations of bullying and racism were thrown at her. It would even be alleged that she actually went as far as to spit in a co-worker's face before shouting racial slurs at her, something which understandably left fans feeling different about the once next big thing. Whilst Impact would initially stick with Blanchard pulling the trigger on her big title win regardless of the backlash, the relationship would soon turn sour, leading to her vacating the belt and leaving the company. And they wouldn't be the only ones that were called on Tessa, as after that, despite prior rumors making it seem like she was either WWE or AEW bound, neither promotion have touched it in the years since, and reports suggest that they never will. He may have at one time dreamed of being the one to retire Brock Lesnar, but now all Matt Riddle likely dreams of is being able to turn back the clock, because despite being well pushed in WWE at points over the last few years, he's unlikely to find work with one of the top two promotions in North America, at least in the immediate future. Why is that? Well, many stories linger over Riddle that make him somebody that a major promotion may not consider working with again, whether it be the sexual assault allegations made against him or his habit of striking positive in drug tests, something that has seen him be suspended in the past. And whilst sure, many performers have bounced back from worse than this and returned to WWE again, the fact that WWE and UFC are now owned by the same parent company makes such a thing unlikely, as Riddle and UFC head Dana White have a notoriously frosty relationship from the King of Bros time as an MMA fighter. It doesn't appear AEW want anything to do with him either, as he would tell Ariel Helwani that he has not heard from the promotion since his release from WWE. Alberto Del Rio had it all. He was a multi-time WWE champion, a legitimate shoot fighter in the world of MMA, and was part of Mexican lucha libre royalty. That said, the thought of him working for either WWE or AEW today seems insane to most, on account of the fact that so many horrific allegations have been levied against him over the past few years, with these allegations including domestic abuse, sexual assault, and even kidnapping, albeit allegations that have yet to lead to a conviction. However, a major promotion taking Del Rio on at this point would be playing with fire, as the negative PR storm would no doubt be swift and severe. WWE evidently don't have any interest in being associated with them anymore, according to a report from the ever-reliable Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful Select, and considering his ex-girlfriend Saraya, a woman who has personally accused him of abusing her, works for AEW, you can't imagine that they'll be interested in bringing him in either. So honestly, it looks like Alberto Del Rio's days in the brightest lights of American wrestling are finished, which is why he makes this list. It was clear back in the late 2010s that WWE saw a huge upside in Lars Sullivan, and why wouldn't they, as he was everything the promotion had always looked for in a monster heel. He was big, he was imposing, and whilst he was not much of an in-ring technician, he didn't have to be if he was going to be booked in the role that Vince McMahon no doubt pictured him in. But once old forum posts of him using racist, sexist, and homophobic language were unearthed in May 2019, fan backlash led to WWE being forced to think twice about what they did with Sullivan going forward, especially as some of these posts were aimed towards Stephanie McMahon herself. That said, in a decision that was heavily criticized at the time, they chose to continue to push on regardless. It seems like the real problem for the company came when he was unable to make a few TV appearances on account of an anxiety disorder getting the better of him, anxiety that was worsened when an old pornographic film that he'd starred in came to light, and that has since led to him retiring from the industry altogether following his WWE release in early 2021, so don't expect to see him return in any promotion anytime soon. Few people in the wrestling industry over the last decade have created as much heat for themselves amongst their peers as Enzo Amore, and that's why, despite being a great mic worker and someone who should have had a job in WWE for a long time, has now all been but blacklisted from the company. Of course, his release from WWE had more to do with sexual assault allegations and an arrest, which he apparently neglected to tell them about, leading to them feeling that he had purposely withheld potentially damning information. It seems though that WWE were looking for any excuse that they could to get rid of him at that point, as he appeared to be widely disliked by his peers backstage on account of his apparent inflammatory attitude. And it's not just people in WWE who didn't have any time for Enzo, as MLW, the company he'd gone to work for after this, fired him too when he allegedly refused to work with some of the promotion's top stars. One source even claimed that he would repeatedly reject creative plans put in place for him, and if he isn't willing to do this for MLW, it's hard to imagine Tony Khan or Triple H wanting to bring him in at any point.